Hi there, Nick Garkusha here with Dave Potter, still talking about deploying highly available workloads into a F5 distributed cloud. And in the last video, we just talked about deploying a customer edge site, which in this case, we're going to use this handy architecture, is a VPC, AWS VPC based site with 3 worker nodes. Any considerations when you're deploying these kind of sites on different clouds, Dave?
Yeah, you need to take into consideration where your users are coming from to access the app. You also need to figure out how much compute's required to drive this app. And depending on that, do you need that information for the app to come from a local source, or do you need it? Is it safe to keep it in the cloud? So what we're doing here is we're going to create an AWS VPC site to run the application, and then we're going to set it up and expose it to the internet.
Right, and we're just deploying a virtual site in the end, which is a construct. I guess it's an abstraction of the VPC underlying infrastructure, and we will have multiple nodes because we would like to have this as a high availability configuration. I would imagine that the distributed cloud site takes care of all of the node management then on top, because we have the app stack running underneath.
So all you need to do then is the VK8's cluster pretty much deploys the application and gets it running on your Kubernetes clusters across the infrastructure.
Nice. And this is a VKS is a construct. Let's go back to this guide real quick. I wanted to show in a little bit more detail one thing. When you're configuring the VKS, which is Virtual Kubernetes Cluster, you have a choice of the actual sites that you want to include. So in theory, you can run across one VKS across multiple customer sites, right?
That's right. You can choose which REs you want to deploy your application or the site to. You can choose which CEs you want to do this to. It's all customizable right here in this part of the configuration.
So in theory, you can then grow your topology, meaning that you add more and more sites if your virtual Kubernetes is deployed across a couple different sites. I guess you can always keep adding more sites as you bring more applications online and still have the same underlying Kubernetes infrastructure.
Absolutely. That's the beautiful part here is you can add sites, you can remove sites. It all depends on where you need it to be deployed at that moment.
Right. And then because this is all Kubernetes, you can take advantage of Helm charts in Kubernetes, which are templates for deploying applications. And here you can see we're using one for PostgreSQL specifically so that we can deploy an HA config of PostgreSQL across multiple pods in this Kubernetes deployment. And I guess you really could also, in theory, deploy the same Helm chart in like a normal managed Kubernetes, AKS, EKS, etc. What's the benefit then of running within a F5 distributed cloud VKS?
Yeah, the really cool thing with using distributed cloud to do the deployment is it will automatically take care of deploying it regardless of whether you want it to run in AWS, on-prem, or in one of the F5 distributed cloud regions. So here we have our Helm charts deployed, and it's very easy to see in the distributed cloud console to see what workloads are actually available, where they're running, what the status is of the application. This is something that's very unique to distributed cloud because we're not just showing the infrastructure, we're actually showing the health of the services that compose the application.
Right, and even including the logs here. And as you can see the node name, AWS HA IP, you got 223, 203, 233. So each one of those are nodes, on top of which are pods, on top of which are the deployments of the workloads that we have running. And Postgres looks like it's up and running now. So I got my infrastructure set up. I have my VKS on top, and now I have my workload on top of that. And this could be any kind of workload. So PostgreSQL is just an example. What's the next step now that we have it done?
Yeah, so now that you've got your workload running, you got to get connected to it. And the next step here is to connect our front end to the workload. So basically, we're going to connect the regional edge to the CE by deploying a TCP load balancer.
And this is just because we have, as an example, a database workload. You may have a backend service that uses something legacy, brownfield, you may need to have this TCP load balancer. If you have a service that is exposing a layer 7 service, they use HTTP, HTTPS, the flexibility is there. In our case, we are using the TCP load balancer because in the next video, we'll talk about how we use regional edge to connect back to our workload and tie everything together for this multi-cloud networking segment. Talk soon, Dave.
All right.